Good morning and welcome to Powertranz live show where we cover all things e-commerce in the Caribbean. Our guests join us from all over the world and generously share their expertise, knowledge, and insight into the digital world and how we operate within it. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and if you're joining us from LinkedIn, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you grow your business online. Today, we're discussing how to use QR payments in the Caribbean. I'm joined today by Eldred Garcia. He is the Senior Vice President, Business and Partner Development at Powertranz, as well as Philip Royale, Assistant Manager, Global Transaction Banking at Scotiabank Jamaica. How are we today?
Hi, Pauline. You're doing very well. Thank you.
Good morning, Pauline. Good to see you as always.
Okay, so welcome, Eldred and Philip. And before we go into all the discussions that we have, because we have quite an audience registered for the event today, I know everyone's excited about the show, but we're going to dive into your questions and we're going to take a little moment to highlight the real challenge and the solution that it addresses. So across the Caribbean, many micro and small businesses still depend on cash. And I know because I've been in that situation where I'm like, oh, I don't have any cash on me, and that person loses a business. However, cash comes with safety risk, both as business owners and a customer. Hi, that's me. That's where Powertranz QR comes in. It's a simple and secure way for customers to pay by scanning a QR code, no website or card machine needed, and it's fast and flexible. So how exactly does it work? Well, we're going to show you with a quick demo. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Check this out.
Here's how to set up Powertranz QR and start receiving QR payments. Step 1. Download the Powertranz app from the App Store or Google Play. Your Apple or Android mobile device will need to be connected to the internet. Step 2. Create an account. Select company and enter the email address, full business legal entity. Select your country from the drop-down list and create a password. Step 3. Click Get Verified, then make activation payment. To use Powertranz QR, you must accept our terms and conditions. Review our master service agreement, terms and conditions, and agree to the fees. The fees for the service are $25 a month and 30 cents per transaction. Please note, your bank will have additional fees for processing. More details on your bank options in the next step. You will then add your card details via the secure Powertranz payment page. Step 4. Click Add Merchant. Add your full merchant legal entity name, select your bank from the drop-down list, and add the MID and TID details. You will need a mobile QR MID from one of our banking partners. If you do not have one, please reach out to your bank or reach out to our banking partners via the details provided in the app. Here's how to create and accept payments. Step 1. Create a payment. Enter a specific payment amount and select whether you would like the option to add a tip. You can then choose to send a link and copy the payment link, send via email, via text message, or generate a QR code. Step 2. Your customer must open the camera on their mobile device, scan the QR code, and follow the link. If you selected Tip On, customers can add a tip. Enter their details and they will be redirected to our secure payment page. When your customers make a payment, you will receive a notification. Here's how to access your transactions and reports. Click See All in your recent transactions list. You can filter to find a transaction from a specific date or see transactions that have been created, are processing, completed, or refunded.
And welcome back. I'm sure everyone is just as excited as I am because I need that when I'm going to the market. Like, let's be honest, guys, that would be great. My herbs man required this. So let's get straight into it. Welcome back, and be sure to like and subscribe because you're going to see more of this on YouTube so you don't miss a single live show. So we're going to ask some questions, and we're going to start with Eldred, just so we could take it all the way back, because I feel like we're now in a position where we all have some idea of what this looks like. But just for those who may have just joined us, what is a QR code?
Well, thank you, Pauline. Thank you very much. The QR code is something that we all know what it is. We've used it before COVID occurred. You can argue that some people may not have used or seen a QR, but after COVID, everybody has used a QR code, whether it's to access a menu or get some information. It is similar to a barcode, but much more advanced. It is a two-dimensional square that is scanned by your phone, and it'll give you access to either a website, it'll display a text, connect you to some Wi-Fi network, or in our case, it will access our hosted payment page. Our hosted payment page has been used for a number of years through traditional websites. We're not inventing, if you will, anything new. What we're doing is leveraging existing technology, making it easy for micro and small merchants to be able to accept payments through having a simple QR code that accesses our hosted payment page, where customers now can securely enter their card information and make a transaction. Now merchants can very easily take credit card payments without having the need to purchase expensive equipment or have additional challenges that they typically would have without a simple application that generates a QR code.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And I usually associate QR codes with a barcode, as you mentioned earlier, or, hey, go visit my website and it's a code. I also see it with Instagram. Instagram has its own unique barcodes when you can follow a content creator. So this question is for Philip. Why are QR codes such a great fit for micro and small merchants in the Caribbean?
Right, hi Pauline. Right, that's a good question, right? So in terms of micro and small businesses in the Caribbean, we have a tagline at Scotiabank that we use to promote our e-commerce products, and it really says never miss a sale, right? And that is typically the significance of having a payment method such as a QR code option for small businesses. It empowers merchants to be able to accept a sale wherever they are, regardless of if they're in their standard operating hours or they're shopping on the weekend and they run into an opportunity. It allows them to be able to take advantage of sale opportunities in whatever circumstance they're in, right? And that has been one of the bigger advantages for merchants, for small businesses, especially, who we understand, the rigors of small business, especially if it's a startup, right? Every sale opportunity is important. Every sale opportunity is important, regardless of whether it's in the middle of the night on your personal time or whether it's in your standard operating times, right? So we want to empower merchants to be able to take advantage of sale opportunities as they come, whenever they come. And as I said, that is critically important to small business owners, and the QR code payment option allows them to be able to do that.
Thank you so much for that, Philip. And, there's a lot of fear behind the unknown, let's be honest, especially when you are, I've experienced, as I mentioned earlier, going into the markets, and there's pencil and paper that people use to track their payments. So when it comes to security, because a lot of people feel that physically I can see the cash, so this is important to me. But how secure are QR codes in relation to payments, Eldred?
Extremely important question, and it's near and dear to my heart. One of the things that everybody who knows me, I always talk about, it's important to make sure that everything that we do is secure. As more technology comes into play with all our merchants across all our markets, we're providing access to everybody, and that unfortunately includes the bad guys. So what we want to do is make sure that everything that we put out is extremely secure. So number one, we have a number of different solutions that we have been using for a number of years in our traditional e-commerce environment. One of them is 3D Secure, which not only allows the merchant to authenticate the cardholder, but it protects them from chargebacks. And because these transactions are running through the traditional e-commerce rails, 3D Secure, is important. And that solution, 3D Secure, is already baked into this solution. An additional solution that is also baked into the solution, to the QR, is our fraud prevention platform, which is Count. So what Count does, it analyzes and determines the level of risk of this transaction to determine if we can proceed or not. So while we're going out into an environment with a very easy, low-tech solution, it does bring along with it very secure security features, the 3DS and the Count Fraud platform. Additionally, when a customer is opening up the QR, they're opening up a hosted payment page, which sits in our environment, in Powertranz environment. This is a PCI DSS level 1 service provider secure payment page. We've been using this for a long time. It's encrypted, it's secure. And not only that, the customer is entering their own cardholder information onto their own phone, which has a number of different levels of security in order to access their phone. So they're also benefiting from that comfort of knowing that they're not handing the card over to anyone. They're putting it onto their own phone. They're putting it onto our hosted payment page, which is PCI secured, and it has additional security associated with it. Again, low-tech technology, all the robust fraud prevention solutions that we have been known for.
Thank you for that. And you did mention quite a few acronyms that a lot of us may not know. And if you're watching us today on the replay, not to worry, there are a lot of videos on Powertranz YouTube channel that you can check out that will explain those acronyms. But I want to ask Philip to expand a bit on one of the terminologies he used earlier, which is a chargeback. For a lot of people, they don't know what that is, so maybe give us some insight.
Sure, no problem. So chargebacks are experienced by merchants, typically where a cardholder could do a transaction and they return to their issuing bank, the bank that issued the card, that I didn't authorize this transaction, or this wasn't me, or I didn't get what I paid for, right? And what Eldred had mentioned earlier is that the platform is a 3DS compatible or 3DS capable. And from a Scotiabank side, all our merchant acquiring options are focused around 3DS2 technology, right? And what that means is that all transactions have to pass through that authentication mechanism, right? So there is a 2-factor or a 3-factor, if you call it, type of authentication that comes with 3DS2. And that helps to limit the possibility of chargebacks from your customer. So not limit the possibility of chargebacks, correction. It doesn't limit the possibility, but it shifts the liability from the merchant to the cardholder if there's a chargeback associated with a 3DS2 transaction, or a transaction that would have passed through the 3DS2 rails, right? So if a customer would have gone through the 3DS2 authentication to enter a one-time password and went through all those levels of authentication and then come back to say that, this wasn't me, the merchant doesn't have any liability there, and that will have to be dealt with between the cardholder and their issuing bank, right? So chargebacks are possible, but with the mechanisms such as 3DS2 and other mechanisms that we have in place, we empower merchants, to win chargeback cases or win disputes that are associated with chargebacks.
And it's such a new problem for folks who would be shifting from cash, because just a little backstory for me, I used to have a Juve band in Barbados, and we were the first band to actually accept online payments only. We stopped doing cash, but we had like about 20% because some people were so hot ears, as the Bajan would say. But after the event, we had we had like 2 or 3 people saying that this was not a payment they made, but I made sure to have them sign for collecting the actual package, because with Juve, it's an experience. So it's obviously difficult to decipher who it is that made this payment. But because we had all their signatures, we never had to pay any chargebacks because that was part of the process. So when it comes to a small business, like who's best suited for QR payments? Because a lot of people are like, well, that's not for me, that's for office people in fancy trippy suit. What would you say to that, Philip?
So, I mean, I'll probably have to question who is not suited, right? Because once you're in business and you're serious about collecting money when the opportunity comes, you would want to be able to have alternatives. You'd want to be able to have options, right? So I would say anybody who is in business, and you want to explore alternatives. You want to be in a position where you're not missing opportunities. You want to be in a position where if a customer doesn't have cash with them, they can still make payment. Or if you're not in your business hours, you're on the weekend, and there's a ripe opportunity that you have to take advantage of right now. You can slip your mobile phone out and make that payment, right? So anybody who is serious about, if you're in business and you're serious about collecting money from your customers, which I think all business owners are, right? Then having an option such as a QR code is definitely good for you, right? There are some scenarios where it's probably not best suited, right? So if you're a QSR, a quick service restaurant, right, and you have droves of people in line waiting to get served, maybe the QR code might not be the best option. But definitely, if you're in the service industry, if you're dealing with your customers on a one-on-one basis, if opportunities come and go very quickly in your industry or in your space, definitely having a payment option such as a QR code would be good for you.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So we're going to go on a break, and when we come back, you may have just joined us and you may have missed our demo. So we want to go through a quick walkthrough with Eldred as to how your business might be able to accept QR payments. So we'll be right back. And welcome back. Thank you so much for joining the Powertranz live show. We cover all things e-commerce with guests that join us from across the world to share knowledge on this digital world that we are all part of. You're not going to find these conversations anywhere because I checked. I really didn't find any. So stick around and make sure to follow our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single live show. And be sure to comment any questions you may have, and we will make sure to answer them before the end of the session. Today, we're discussing how to use QR payments in the Caribbean, and we are joined by Eldred and Philip. So before the break, we were discussing what types of business are suitable for QR payments, and just about everybody. Let's just start there, right? Or some sort of electronic payments is important for you. So if you may have missed the demo at the beginning, not to worry. It will be available once this live show is ended. But we would like to ask Eldred to just give us a quick walkthrough, for businesses like a taxi driver. There are a lot of pop-up vendors and food trucks all over Trinidad, and I know Jamaica and Barbados. There's actually quite a popular trend of going around with a bread van to sell bread on evenings in Barbados. So walk us through, Eldred, as to how one might accept a QR payment.
Well, Pauline, you mentioned a couple of the islands in the Caribbean, and something that's important with regards to what you mentioned. What we've seen historically is about 60%. I'm going to repeat that because it's a super high number. 60% of merchants in the Caribbean only accept cash. And this is a huge challenge, not only for the Caribbean itself and each individual island as it's wanting to grow, but for individual small merchants that are looking to have their own business, but also expand their business. Most of the time, the challenge is that they don't have a relationship with the bank. In order for them to get a loan is very challenging because the bank doesn't know they exist. They have no direct relationship with the bank. And they're looking for ways to accept credit cards. Why? Because they lose sales. And they lose sales in ways that you would imagine, but they lose other types of sales that you probably don't think about. So imagine somebody coming off a cruise ship or landing as a tourist and trying to buy a doubles on the side of the street or a hat at the seaport on the Bahamas, and not feeling comfortable bringing cash or doing a foreign exchange once they arrive. Those merchants, those small merchants who rely on the tourism, lose those sales. Another way they lose sales is, imagine if I feel only comfortable bringing $20 with me because I'm willing to, for whatever reason, take the risk of potentially losing those $20, but it's only $20. So they arrive at a merchant, they want to buy 2 items, and those 2 items are $30. Now the customer has to make a decision between one item or the other. The merchant again loses the opportunity. So when we're talking about this solution, it's not to take over other solutions, to complement other solutions. So you can talk about small merchants, whether it's a taxi driver. We all have, whoever has gone to the Caribbean, arrive at the airport, and then we have to find what taxi takes credit card, and most of them only take cash. Taxi drivers, we're talking about micro merchants, those on the side of the street selling doubles or jerk chicken. But we also have seen attorneys who need to take a retainer and have no way of taking a retainer other than a check or cash. This is also a good solution. So it's a wide range of merchants that this solution would work for, whether it's a micro merchant, a small merchant, or even a medium merchant that wants to have an additional channel in order to take payments. The wonderful thing about this, it's an application and it sits on your phone. You lose a terminal, then you have to start thinking about, do I want to do another investment to purchase another terminal? If you lose your phone, most of us will go out and buy another phone because we have to call mom, right? Just download the app again, enter your sign-in credentials, and you have the app again. You could also provide it to extended families that, as we know, small merchants that have small shops have, their husbands or wives or kids attending the shops. Now each of them can have their own app on their own phone with their own sign-on credentials. So it expands the capabilities of micro and small merchants, even medium merchants, to now be able to easily take credit card payments.
And you actually mentioned an interesting point there with, that $20 coming off because the port is such a huge economic activity for a lot of islands. And I want to share personal experience because I have a bone to pick with Scotiabank. Having a credit card and going to Costco is a very dangerous experience. And I had plans. I had a list and I failed. I just want you to know, Philip, that I failed because some of the things I purchased, it's going to last me for 5-6 months. And when it comes to the benefits for business, because there's a struggle for me as a consumer, and I obviously have to be more responsible, but Costco is a dangerous place. And with my credit card, if I had cash, obviously it would have been a different experience. So
the merchants are happy to hear that.
This bone I have to pick with you, I also wanted to be an opportunity to teach our audience, how could small and micro businesses benefit from using QR payments, Philip?
So, the question is, how can they benefit from using QR payments, right?
Yes.
Right. So the benefit is significant, right? In terms of just the fact that the example that you gave just now, in terms of your experience going into Costco and your spending because you have this unlimited amount of cash available on your credit card, right? So that's the benefit, right? So consumers generally, I think post-COVID, right? The marketplace is at a place where consumers have become so exposed to different ways of making payments. The issuing banks are providing other options to consumers. A lot of our consumers are, they're not only based in the Caribbean, or they're not only exposed to the Caribbean, they travel in North American markets. And so they see what the potential that's available. They see what is available to them elsewhere, and they're coming back to the Caribbean, and they're having these expectations and even demands of Caribbean merchants, right? So, you find people, personally, I don't walk around with a lot of cash, right? And so my personal experience has been, if a merchant is unable to accept a card payment via whatever means, it's likely that they lose my business, right? And that's the experience that a lot of consumers have personally, and that's the experience that a lot of merchants have, in that when they do not have a cardless or a cashless alternative, they lose business, they lose opportunities, right? And so the benefit is significant in that you'll benefit from persons who, typically are not people who walk around with cash generally. And there's also the benefit that, you can attract consumers on the go, right? Persons who may not have planned to spend with you, but you have a product they realize a need and they have the capacity to pay, so they will pay, as opposed to, telling them to come back to you. They will go home, think about it. All right, I don't need this that much, right? So there's that benefit definitely that comes from being able to accept QR payments.
All right. And I want to correct you, Philip. It's not unlimited access to credit. Just in case people looking for me. I mean, I do have 2 pounds of pecans that I don't need, but it's not unlimited. I just want to say that. Okay. All right. So Annie is in the comments on LinkedIn, but she may have to clarify a bit. Her question is, can informal businesses such as street vendors use QR codes to accept payments? Now, the word informal can be interpreted in many ways. So I don't know if Eldred, you want to take a stab at this question?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 things to take away from this response. Number one, I've mentioned this before. This is a low-tech solution. Why do I emphasize that this is a low-tech solution? Because it's ready right now. All the financial institutions that we work with have been using e-commerce for many, many years. What we have done is leverage that existing technology, those existing rails, and made it a very easy way for someone in the physical world now to be able to leverage those rails in the virtual world to take payments in the physical world using a QR code. So it's very easy. Now, going directly to your question, can an informal merchant, when you say informal merchant, are you saying someone who does not have a relationship with a financial institution? So the response is, yes, you do need a relationship with a financial institution. One of the wonderful things that all this has created is the ability to all the banks that we work with to take a look at their processes with regards to bringing in those informal merchants out there that are only taking cash and bringing them into the fold, if you will, to giving them the credentials, making them a formal merchant, if you will. So they now have the credentials to sign up. And the reason that you need to sign up with the bank is because once you take a credit card payment, the deposits of that transactions are deposited into that bank account at that financial institution. So yes, you do have to have a relationship with a financial institution, but Philip is a testimonial here of the experience of rolling this solution out in Jamaica, understanding the needs of these micro merchants, doing that transition from informal merchants to formal merchants, if you will, establishing a relationship with the bank. So now that they can take credit cards and have those deposits deposited into their bank accounts. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, please let me know.
Yes, let us know in the comments, Annie, if we need to elaborate. But I would also like Philip to add his perspective, especially being on the ground in Jamaica.
Sure. And so I think Eldred interpreted the question well in terms of what is meant by informal merchants, because we do have that question coming very often from merchants who they may not have registered their business formally to get to the point where they can actually open bank accounts. And that is important to access these services through Scotiabank, right? The business would need to be registered. We will require documents of you throughout the account opening process that would come from formalizing your business. So very important for formalization, but I wouldn't see it as a deterrent, right? So there are other benefits to formalizing your business. Access to credit for one, right, is one of those benefits. So definitely, I wouldn't see it as a deterrent. I wouldn't encourage merchants to stay away from these products or services because of the need for formalization. Because there's a lot of fear around formalizing the business, but there's a lot of benefit as well. Which we'll be happy to talk to you guys further on it and put you in contact with one of our business banking officers to discuss that some more. But we do have businesses, and we're able to support merchants with formalizing their business.
That is great to have you. Go ahead.
I was just going to mention, I don't know where Arlene is writing in from, but like you mentioned, we have viewership from all over the Caribbean and Central America and elsewhere as well. But I think you put it in the notes that if you go to our website, we've updated our website with powertranz.com, and you're going to see all the different jurisdictions, or all the different countries that we operate in, and all the different financial institutions within those countries. Philip and Scotiabank absolutely have been pioneers in this. They were the first ones to roll this out in Jamaica, and they have a ton of experience now. But depending on where you're calling in from, you can very easily see all the different financial institutions that we work with in the associated banks.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Eldred. So we have lots of questions. It's getting a little hype up in there. So we're gonna try to answer as many questions as we can for the next 30 minutes, but we're gonna do so right after we. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thank you for joining the Powertranz live show. We cover all things e-commerce with guests who are joining us from all across the world to share the knowledge on this digital world that we all reside in. You're not going to find these conversations anywhere because I checked, it's not there. So make sure to like and follow us on LinkedIn so you don't miss a single live show. And be sure to comment your questions because we will do our best to answer it live today. Or if we don't see it now, we will definitely respond to it later. Today we're discussing how to use QR payments in the Caribbean, and we're joined by Eldred and Philip. Eldred is from Powertranz and Philip is from Scotiabank, Jamaica. So we would have covered a lot of information at the beginning, and I have a lot more questions, but that doesn't matter because we're going into the comment section to answer some questions. So we are going to start with Rodney. Does this solution point merely to the payment gateway, or can the code that is generated and shared with the customer include the transaction details, example, invoice number, type of currency, amount, and other transaction on specific details? Who wants to take this question?
Can generate and share with the customer, including, so traditionally, and Philip, you can chime in here from the bank side. Traditionally, when you go to a merchant, what do they give you? They give you as a customer, what do you get? You get a receipt, and the receipt says typically the date, the time of the transaction, the amount, and the method of payment in order for you to have some kind of record of a transaction. From the merchant side, what do you typically are interested in? You want to see the list of transactions because at the end of the day, you want to know all the sales that you've done to make sure you can reconcile that at the end of the day and make sure that the amount of the sales equal to the amount of the deposits into your bank account. One of the cool features, even though this is a very low-tech, easy-to-use solution, one of the cool features that this application has is that the merchant can very easily see history of their transactions right on their application, right on their phone. You can very easily scroll through all the transactions, you can filter it, and you can look for a specific transaction. It may be for a number of different reasons. So you can possibly do a refund, or if the customer needs a copy of their receipt, electronic receipt, because they've either deleted it by accident, you can easily go into their transaction and send them another receipt. So every single transaction, the customer will receive an electronic receipt, a traditional receipt that you normally get from a consumer perspective, and the merchant will get a notification that transaction was approved, and it'll be in their history. The merchant also has access to our payment portal, which means that you have now access to all the traditional feature functionality of a gateway. So you can pull reports and see all the stuff that, whether that's a micro merchant, a small merchant, or an enterprise merchant has access to. But for these micro merchants, what they really want to see is, I made 10 transactions, I have $150 in sales. I want to make sure that $150 are deposited into my account. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, Philip, you wanted to chime in there on the bank side?
Yeah, sure. So typically, as Eldred mentioned, right? So there's a minimum standard in terms of what's required as information to be presented to the card holder once the transaction is complete. And we would have gone through a process with Powertranz and their team to ensure that that minimum standard is being met in terms of invoice number, order number, transaction ID, etc. That should be represented on the receipt. So there's a level of compliance that has to be achieved, and the solution, the QR code app and Powertranz typically would have gone through that process, and they've satisfied that compliance requirement, right? In addition, Eldred mentioned that once you would have completed the transaction, you have access to the Powertranz portal where you can view transaction details, but you'd also have access to Scotiabank's merchant portal, right, which gives you additional information relating to each individual transaction that you would have done on a Scotiabank merchant platform, right? So in addition to what's available through Powertranz, you will also have access to transaction details, and even more than transaction details, probably bank-specific information such as your chargebacks, etc., through our merchant portal. So that's additionally available to you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And in answering the question that Eldred had earlier, he answered a question that Donna had as relates to reporting capabilities. And Donna, I just want to add, we do have a demo that's going to be available on YouTube. So make sure and subscribe, and you will get all the information as to signing up on the different app platforms. So we have a question. I'm just going into the YouTube audience. As it relates to developers, would we be able to directly connect Powertranz to a website, example with a hosted page, without going through the bank developers and fees?
So when you connect into our hosted payment page, which is basically what this QR application does. For micro merchants, it generates a QR and it directs them into our hosted payment page. For a traditional merchant, if I understand the question correctly, for a traditional merchant that's trying to connect to us, there's typically two ways that you can connect to our gateway in order to process transactions. One is through our hosted payment page, which is the exact same hosted payment page that generates that QR for micro merchants. It's a much easier connection to our gateway, and it also provides PCI compliance. This is basically the industry requirements to secure sensitive cardholder data. You could either use our secure hosted payment page that's PCI compliant, or you can connect to us through an API. An API is basically a connector. We have a number of different plugins that we operate with. So the typical ones that you may have heard of is Shopify or WooCommerce, but we have numerous different plugins that operate in different markets. So you have the ability to connect through an API, which is a plugin connector, or through our hosted payment page. But this is outside of this conversation, if you will, because that is for a traditional merchant connecting to our gateway directly. But for the mobile QR, this is a standalone solution. So this is for, again, merchants that want to take a payment that are not connected to other operating systems, just need to take a transaction through a credit card, generate a QR, very easily access our hosted payment page, which is secure, and they're able to take a payment. Do we have other solutions that allow connectivity to other operating systems that are out there? The answer is yes. But for this solution, it is a standalone solution. And again, it's to make the acceptance of credit cards very easily for a micro merchant all the way up to a small and medium merchant.
Okay, so we're going to head back to the comment section. This question is for Philip. And Annie has a follow-up question. Other than formal registration, what documents do banks require to provide access to credit card payment technologies such as QR code?
Okay, so once you are a formally registered business, you'll have gone through the process regardless. Well, depending on the country that you're in. If you're in Jamaica, that would be with the company's office of Jamaica, right? But depending on where you are, there will be a process to go through to register the business. And once you have that documentation of business registration, if there are any additional documentation that's required from a business banker's perspective, they will request it. But once your business is registered and you're able to open accounts, then you can access merchant services, which is where we come in, right? And with merchant services, you are able to access options such as a QR code. So we ask you typically for information relating to your business, the amount of volumes you're expected to process, what are your ticket sizes, in terms of the transactions that you're planning to process, right? And we use that information to develop somewhat of a merchant profile and provide you with the service. So the process to open the account might be a little different. For the business, depending on the type of business that you're in. And of course, we'll encourage speaking with a business banker to get that perspective. But once the account is opened, you will be able to access merchant services. There's a process to go through for onboarding, normally pretty seamless. And once you're onboarded, you can start using the service.
Okay. So
Pauline,
yes.
If I may, I have a question and answer for myself and for the audience. I know that you mentioned earlier that we can generate a payment link. So why would you generate a payment link versus a QR? I think this is a very important question because this was actually a problem or a challenge that we had in some of our markets where the merchant is not physically present, but they need to take a payment very easily, just like a QR code. I'll give you the scenario that we had to deal with, a pizzeria. Customers were calling in, they were ordering pizza. The merchant, the pizzeria, was making the pizza, and they were delivering the pizza only to find out that the customer didn't have any cash or a way to pay. So what do you do with a pizza? You either give it away or you throw it away. So what we created was the ability to either generate a QR for a transaction that is physically in person or a payment link. So now when you call the pizza place and you order a pizza, the merchant can say, okay, your pizza is $20. I'm going to send you a payment link through a text. Give me your phone number. They enter the phone number, and the customer in their house receives a payment link, which accesses the same hosted payment page that you would access if you were doing it with a QR in person. Now the customer at home can enter their payment information, make the payment, and then the pizza owner receives a confirmation and feels confident that they can make the pizza, deliver it, the pizza has been paid. So those two options exist within the same application. Again, we're trying to address certain challenges that we all experience across the Caribbean. And those two, this application addresses.
Okay, thanks for that. So we have quite a number of people still joining us in. I want to ask sort of a traditional question to Philip as it relates to the idea of a point of sale. I mean, us as consumers, even business owners, are very familiar with point of sale system, and especially with the new tap, it's just like, oh, we're all now in the new age. But how cost effective are QR payment solutions compared to this traditional way that we know how to receive payments as business owners?
So in terms of cost effectiveness, so with the traditional point of sale, there's what we refer to as a terminal rental fee, right? Which having a terminal or a point of sale hardware device that matches with the capability of a QR code, in that, you know, you can take it around with you, you can use it at pop-up shops. You would need a device that facilitates GPRS and SIM capabilities, and that carries a higher terminal rental fee, right? And in comparison to the QR code, you'll be paying less for a terminal rental versus a monthly fee for the QR code application. So definitely it is more cost effective. But in terms of comparing the value, I'd probably move the conversation a little further than just cost, right? Because there's also the fact that you're talking about hardware, and with hardware, there is a greater likelihood of, I mean, our POS hardware has been stable for, several months, right? But with hardware, typically, there is a likelihood of failure, right? With the mobile app, you're using a mobile phone, right? So the convenience or the stability of the app is as secure as your mobile phone is, right? Or as secure as the use of your mobile phone is, right? So there is less possibility of hardware failure. On the hardware, you have an application that is controlled by on our side, on the bank side, right? And so if there is, in the odd instance, a failure of the application on the hardware, you'd have to contact the bank. If, for example, the application fails on your phone, you have the option of uninstalling and reinstalling, or just trying to control that within your purview. Before having to reach out to Powertranz or to the bank, right? And so there is a greater level of convenience with using the QR code mechanism as opposed to a point of sale, especially if your business carries you out in pop-ups or on the road to do transactions, whether you have a field service model, you're engaging customers on the road and you need to have an option for them. Having your mobile phone is probably far more convenient than walking with an extra device, which is a terminal, right? And in the grand scheme of things, you probably will have your mobile phone with you once you're out, right? Whether it's outside of your business hours or during business hours, right? It's going to become something to get used to in terms of having a point of sale device with you on hand as you go out, right? Yes, it's more cost effective, but beyond being cost effective, there are far more advantages of using QR payments as a mobile option for payments than having just a point of sale device, which is also relevant in some instances. There is use for the point of sale device, but definitely the QR code option does provide a greater level of flexibility and convenience.
I can also add to that, as a consumer, there's not a worse feeling than having my cart and going to the cashier and they tell me that the terminal is down. Dramatic pause. How could this happen to me? Worst day ever. I mean, the struggle is unreal there, but it's something
if I could just add, Pauline,
yes.
if I could just add one thing to everything that Philip mentioned. So because it's software versus hardware, like Philip mentioned, all the updates, new features, functionalities, capabilities are as easy as doing an update to the application. We don't need to change devices. Device falls, it breaks, someone can steal a device. Someone does that to your phone, people will always replace their phone. They need their phone for other things. Typically nowadays to take pictures, but normally to make phone calls. But very easily to download the app again, sign in with your credentials, and you have the application again. But from the feature functionality, updates, capabilities, all the new enhances that we are constantly making to the application, there's no need to do anything with regards to a hardware. This is software. So like every other app on your phone, when it's time to update, it will automatically update and you'll get the latest and greatest on your phone. So another benefit.
Okay. So we have a few more questions to respond to on LinkedIn, but before we do that, we'll go on a break and we'll be right back. And welcome back. Thank you so much for joining the Powertranz live show. We cover all things e-commerce with guests joining us from across the world to share their knowledge in the digital world that we all reside in. If you're going to look for these conversations anywhere else, you're not going to find it because I tried. So be like Joshua. He is joining us from Jamaica on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and be sure to comment with any questions that you may have, and we will try our best to answer them today. Today, we're discussing how to use QR payments in the Caribbean, and we're joined by Eldred. He's joining us from Powertranz, as well as Philip. He is joining us from Scotiabank, Jamaica. So we have some questions. There's one from Joshua on YouTube that I'm going to direct to Eldred. Can we get the onboarding sequence similar to Stripe so we'll be able to sign up as individuals?
So like I mentioned before, right now you need to establish a relationship with a financial institution. The model that Stripe has and I would venture to say it's a PayFac or a payment facilitator, where Stripe is the actual merchant on record, is a model that is not currently supported in the Caribbean. So putting that aside, the only way to do this right now is having a direct relationship with a financial institution. So yes, you do have to establish a relationship with the financial institution. They're going to give you the credentials as a merchant, which is a merchant ID, a terminal ID, and all the data that we need in order to board you on our gateway. But it also provides you a number of different benefits, like Philip mentioned. So access to credit to expand your business. Instant microloans is going to be a thing now that those micro merchants never had. So now the bank knows you, right? So they have access to you. So they understand your cycle of business, and they're able to intervene, if you will, on your behalf and say, hey, we've noticed that you might need a microloan to purchase either inventory or to pay salaries. Before, that was not a thing. The bank did not have access to you, did not know who you were, and it made your business grow, very difficult, your growth very, very difficult. So specifically related to your question, that PayFac or payment facilitator model currently is not supported in the Caribbean. So you do need to establish a direct relationship with a financial institution.
Okay, and I can add to that as a small business owner myself. It took a while because I too grew up with a grandmother who put her money under her bed. Wasn't sure about and how to manage my money, but when I built a relationship with Scotiabank, I was offered a business loan, which was huge for me as a small business, and I was very surprised. But now I understand how it works, so it's important to build that relationship with your bank. So we're going to head to Rodney on LinkedIn. I don't think we answered this question, and I'm going to direct it to Philip. Can the actual QR code be coded to a specific invoice that is due to the merchant so that when the person scans the code, the details are automatically populated on the transaction details? I believe this is sort of like an accounting question.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's more platform related, and I believe there are customizations that are available within the QR code app. Since Powertranz is actually more involved in the development of the platform, I'd probably hand that question over to Eldred to speak to the capabilities there.
So thanks, Philip. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is there's different ways to generate a QR. So typically, a QR can be a static QR, right? So you've seen them before. They're used by the restaurant. You scan them, it shows a menu, or you scan them on a piece of art, and it'll show you the information of the artist, static information. We have dynamic QRs, which means that the merchant is generating a QR for a specific transaction. So you come up to the merchant, you're buying either a product or a service, and the QR that's generated can have an invoice number and can have the amount to be paid populated with the addition of adding the functionality or the capability of adding tip, if it's a service typically. Within the app, you also have the ability to open up a QR that is not related to a specific transaction, that does not have reference to an invoice. So think about if you are a nonprofit organization, right, and you have a pop-up tent, and you are at an event, and you want people to come and donate. Typically, they don't have a lot of money that they donate, or if they did have a credit card, they would donate more. So now you can have a pop-up tent, have your mobile QR. Somebody shows up and says, I want to donate to your organization. I love what you guys stand for. The merchant can generate a generic QR. At the bottom of the app, there is generate a QR. And it'll generate a QR, and the hosted payment page that pops up on the customer side will have the amount to enter open. So now you can enter, $1, $100, $1,000, as much as you want to donate to this nonprofit organization. So short answer is yes. Long answer, we have both capabilities.
Okay. So I would like to ask Philip, because you're on the ground, you're seeing the shift that's happening, not just from a cash to online payments, but just in general, the digital adoption of consumers. So when it comes to the cash space. Can you share maybe an example of a business that overcame a challenge using these solutions?
Yes, I think we have many examples, right? And I think what has happened in 2021, 2022, when COVID was upon us, and merchants really needed to find a way to accept payments. There's a word that became popular with the pandemic, and it's pivoting, right? So a lot of merchants pivoted to, trying to find other methods to, accept payments from their customers. They needed to stay in business. So even if as a merchant they were averse to transitioning to cashless payment methods, or they had their reservations about it, they were forced to do it because the lights needed to be kept on, right? So we have a lot of merchants who they will share with you testimonials, their personal experiences as small business owners, how just being able to accept payments remotely has transformed, has helped them to stay afloat during the pandemic. And now that we're post-pandemic, it has transformed their their business models, right? So you have companies who were, brick and mortar. They had this physical storefront locations, right? And post-pandemic, they've realized that, hey, I don't need this structure, right? I can operate completely virtually. And we have customers who have transitioned to operating fully virtually because they're using online e-commerce solutions, QR code, etc., to power their business without the need to be in an office space on a daily basis, right? And so, a lot of customers have taken that leap, to accept payments, use non-traditional methods of payment acceptance, and they've seen how that has benefited them in terms of reducing just their business's operational expense and being able to pump more cash into their business, being able to realize more profit, just by using these payment methods that do not require an office space or the resources that would come with having a physical office space.
Wow, you just used a word there that just triggered me back to what was, which is pivot. I'm like, oh my gosh, so many of us use that word. It's and my heart started to beat faster. All right, so we're gonna close off this discussion just with some insight in terms of people who are watching this show now or maybe on the replay and they're not certain, because obviously when you're accustomed to a certain type of you're like, okay, I'm receiving money via cash. That's what I'm comfortable with. And you're expecting me now to learn something on my phone besides going on Facebook. So what advice would you give to businesses out there who are like, I'm not sure what this is, and they're like, I don't trust what's happening on technology. What advice would you give to them?
Well, Pauline, I would say two things. There's a question I always ask them. I said, be honest with yourself. How much business are you losing today? People coming up and trying to make a transaction, trying to purchase something, whether it's a product or a service, and they either can't, or if they can only purchase half or a fraction of what they intended to purchase because they don't have all the cash in their hand. That's number one. And number two, for those who say, well, cash is free, cash is not free, right? Somebody has to manage your cash. Somebody has to secure your cash. Somebody has to take your cash and deposit your cash. God forbid, there is an intervention in the way, in the middle of that. Somebody holds you up and takes the cash is gone. So the cash is not free, besides the fact that you're losing business. With credit card transaction, you can expand your business. You can have a relationship with a financial institution and access credit. You can, what we've seen statistically speaking is that you have double-digit growth of sales. Why? People can now purchase when they couldn't before. And people can purchase more. People typically purchase more when they have credit cards because they don't have the limitations of whatever's in their pocket. They have the limitations of whatever credit they have on their credit card. So sales increase. So if you're really thinking about it, be honest with yourself and say, how much business have I lost? How much more business could I have gained? And how can I expand my business in the future? And the only way with doing that is through credit card acceptance. Cash is very limiting, if you will.
Okay, so on that note, we're going to close up. I just want to answer one question. I want Philip to answer this question, and I think it's a very quick answer. Donna from LinkedIn wants to know, can you receive international payments?
The very quick answer is yes, absolutely, definitely.
And there we go. And on that note, we're going to close up this session. Thank you so much to Eldred and Philip for joining us today. If we didn't answer any of your questions today, not to worry. We are going to slide into the comment section and respond to you on the page. Once again, thanks for joining us today as we discuss how to use QR payments in the Caribbean. And be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube for our next Powertranz live discussion. And I will see you soon. Bye, everybody.